As a minister, I find myself talking with people quite often about death, which inevitably raises the question, what comes next? Is there an afterlife? And what do Unitarian Universalists believe about an afterlife? When planning this year's Seeker series focused on some of the most commonly asked questions in our church, this one definitely rose to the top. This theological question is also personal. We know the pain of loss. We fear that when we die, we will be annihilated and our unique consciousness will be gone. We worry that our life here and now is purposeless. We fear the loss of our relationship with those we love, and we fear we will be forgotten. David Eagleman speaks to this kind of fear in Some Tales from the Afterlives, a book that he wrote of 40 imagined possibilities of life beyond death. One of these tales describes 3 deaths that each person goes through. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is put in the grave. The third is that moment, sometime in the future, when our name is spoken for the last time. Eagleman imagines a lobby in which everyone awaits their third death. Some wait a very long time. Historical figures, for example, who wait, as he says, with aching hearts for their statues to fall. Others may leave the lobby sooner than they had hoped. The reading we heard earlier from Rachel Naomi Remen brings up something that is more common than I myself realized until I began my ministry, and that is experiences around death that we cannot explain. Where did the voice of Tim's father come from when he hadn't spoken in at least 10 years? As a hospital chaplain, I sat with people who, as they neared death, began seeing and hearing people who I couldn't see, including loved ones who had died long ago. They weren't scared. Rather, they were filled with joy and hope at being in the presence of those whom they had lost. It's as if in their final moments they had mastered the art of losing that the poet Elizabeth Bishop writes about in her poem, One Art. She says, the art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost, that their loss is no disaster. She goes on to describe many losses: door keys, an hour badly spent, memories of places and names, her mother's watch, and people she loved. Bishop's father died when she was a baby, and her mother suffered a nervous breakdown, and she went to live with family and never saw her again. In adulthood, Bishop lost her partner to suicide. She learned over time the art of losing. Loss that looks like a disaster, but which was intended when life began. I met a young girl once, also when I was doing hospital chaplaincy, who was struggling with this art of losing. She was visiting her grandmother in the hospital, who was there with end-stage cancer. I could tell that the granddaughter was grappling with the idea of her grandmother being gone, or no longer being there with her, that this loving and caring presence in her life would be gone. The grandmother told her, when I die, I won't be gone. I'll be flying with the birds. So whenever you see a bird, you'll know that I'm near. And the girl thought about this for a bit, and as it sunk in, I could see her demeanor change. She seemed more calm and clearly comforted by her grandmother's assurance. I hope that this young girl, now not so young, still feels her grandmother's presence in her life. And a few years ago, I was sitting in my office with the parents of a 44-year-old man who had died very suddenly. We were talking about his life and planning for his memorial service when a bright red bird landed on the windowsill and rested there, kind of watching us. The father stopped and said, "Look." He explained that the red bird was his son, Robert. I could see tears well up in his eyes, and we all stopped and looked. I thought, what a beautiful bird. Yeah, he is watching us. I could feel both the weight of the loss and the power of this father's love for his son in that moment. And he was comforted by the sense that Robert was still with him and that even though he died so young, that his love was still present in his parents' lives. Now, I know that many of you have had experiences like these, because when they happen or when the topic comes up at church like today, you tell your ministers, often in hushed tones, about them. You whisper to us wondering, is this okay here? Will I be laughed at? So let me say here from the pulpit in very clear terms that it is okay to share these experiences here. And it's okay to believe that they are very real. Too often, Unitarian Universalists get painted as strictly rational people who dismiss experiences that we cannot prove or explain. But we are also a people who freely ask questions and search for truth and meaning. At times like these, when we witness the connection between the living and those who have died, we can trust our experiences and glean insight and meaning from them. We are a church that welcomes your questions and wrestles with them in very honest ways. And what better place is there than church to explore such important, deep, and meaningful experiences and the insights about life and death that arise from them? When asked what Unitarian Universalists believe about the afterlife, the beginning of my answer is fairly simple. We catch glimpses of an afterlife in this life, in our experiences of love. But we haven't been to the afterlife yet, and so we probably don't know the fullness of what it is. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote in Inner Sunrise, "Go within, hear the story of the sunrise from the sun itself. If there were no sunrise within, I would have set long ago." Of course, we know that the sun rises even after it sets. The inner sunrise is eternal, as is the love of this life that we are living now. Without this kind of love, we would have set long ago. The love of our lives survives death and brings us into ever greater harmony with the divine. The affirmation that we grow in harmony with the divine forever, that we say every Sunday, has roots in our Universalist tradition, and the belief that God would never infinitely punish us finite humans by sending us to hell. There are variations on this theology, but what they share is a trust in the goodness of an all-loving God whose love is eternal. Unitarian Universalist beliefs about the afterlife are also informed by science. We say we come from dust and to dust we shall return, and not just because the Bible says it, but because that's physically what happens to us. We're part of something larger that still exists on a certain level when we die. The atoms that made us came from other forms of life before us. As we sometimes say, we are made of stardust. And when we die, these atoms return to the universe and become other forms of life. This is the common destiny that we share with all of life. While individual people and lives come to an end, they are never entirely lost. Unitarian Universalists in this church and elsewhere have shared with me a number of beliefs and hopes about an afterlife. Of course, some believe that at death, nothing happens. Some have a sense that they'll be reunited with their loved ones who have died when they themselves die, and that possibility brings us comfort as we near the end of life. Some believe in reincarnation, that our soul is reborn in a new body. Some believe that the matter of our bodies becomes part of the universe of matter, taking other shapes and forms over time. Some believe that the energy or spirit of a person who dies is reabsorbed or expressed through their children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews. Some believe that the spirits of those who have died continue to move among us living. And then there are, of course, some who don't give it much thought at all, and that's okay too. We will not find a capital T truth about death and the afterlife in Unitarian Universalism, but we can find a love that sustains us in this sanctuary, in our lives, and beyond this life, because love never dies. Love transforms and connects us as we enter this life, as we make our way through it, and as we leave it. Rachel Naomi Remen's story concludes, much of life can never be explained, but only witnessed. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many beliefs about the afterlife, and we affirm the importance of finding meaning and purpose not only in the hope of something coming after death, but in this life that we are living now. We must bear witness to the goodness and the value of this life. Whatever comes after death, this life matters very much. As the poet Jean Lohman asks, did I love? Finish my task in the world. Learn at least one of the many names of God. At the intersections, the boundaries where one life began and another ended. The jumping off places between fear and possibility. At the ragged edges of pain, did I catch the smallest glimpse of the holy? This is what we do here. We love and are loved. We discern our gifts and purpose. We do good work in the world. We move from fear to possibility, and we catch glimpses of the holy here and there. If we do these things before we die, we will have caught glimpses of the goodness and holiness of whatever comes after death. So trust your experiences. Trust those glimpses. Bear witness to them, and find hope in them for you and for all whom you love. May it be so. Amen.